Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Atlantic City. We're in the top 8. We're in the quarterfinals. It is Luis Scott Vargas on the left-hand side against Alexander Hayne on the right. We'll make sure that the graphics are updated. There we go. Alexander is currently sitting at number 24 in the world. He's tied with Ben Stark. Luis not on the list at the moment, but it's good to have him back in the top 8. Alex,
he's a Hall of Famer.
Breaking his curse. He's never actually made it to the top 8 of a GP in the United States.
He's done it in Japan.
Yet he's literally won GPs in Europe, Japan, and Canada.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not talking top 8s, I'm talking victories. All right, so Scream Reach Brawler for Luis. Now, for those of you that were live with us, you got to see us watch, you got to watch Luis draft the deck. But for those of you that are watching on replay or are just joining us, Luis had to go a little deep. The top end of his deck is quite strong. You're going to see some powerful rares from Luis's side. The bottom end of his deck is misery. It is, we're talking morphs he can't flip up, straight up. Just can't turn them up.
It's Grey Ogre, it's fine. Okay.
Yeah, you are way too nice.
No,
I don't understand you at all.
I think you're overblowing it.
I don't. I'm not. You don't just play 2/2s for 3 in modern era Magic and get away with it. That you're going to get ran over.
If you have Thunderbreak Region and Kolaghan Sturm's Fury, then you can follow it up with Crux of Fate. It doesn't matter what your
If you draw 3 rares, sure, but that's not how most games go. And case in point, Thunderbreak Regent just died, and now Luis is going to have to lean on some of his not rares to try to win this game because you know what? His dragon's down. And he's got a Scream Reach Brawler, which is one of his better non-rare cards. He's got a pair of Twin Bolts. He looks like he's going to try to leverage one of them right here. It's going to be Vulturous Haven. Vulturous Haven's going to take care of the Brawler and keep the cards flowing here for Luis Scott Vargas.
Yeah, I mean, he has that Crux of Fate in hand, so just drawing extra cards is really good for him because as long as he can get Alex to overcommit to the board, he wants Alex to get into it. He wants to get into a situation where Alex is spending more cards. A block here is fine. You probably get a trick out of Alex's hand.
I think Luis just ended up taking it.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Is that how you're seeing it? Okay.
Yep.
It was only one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like a who cares.
Yeah. All right, and a nice follow-up here for Alex. You can see he's on red-white right now. He actually first picked a flatten in the draft, but didn't end up playing it. He's just straight up red-white, 8 plains, 8 mountains. He may even have a dual land. Yeah, he's got a
land deck.
No, he's got a Windscarf.
Oh,
right?
okay, okay.
All right, and here's Kolaghan the Stormfury. So plan A for Luis Scott Vargas. Draw all 3 of his rares is in full effect here, and he is smashing Alex with them. And Alex can only really laugh. I mean, he already beat a Thunderbreak Regent this game. He killed one of those, and he thought, okay, I'm out of the woods now. He wasn't even close. He is getting hit for a lot of damage, and you can, of course, see why Luis didn't want to block and risk losing his flyer in that transaction as well.
I mean, it looks like Alex has a white rune mark in his hand, and I would much rather be playing an off-color morph than a white rune mark.
Yeah, white rune marks are not good. I mean, they're both bad.
It may just be one of those drafts where everybody kind of...
It felt like it. If you were watching
scrappy.
it, yeah, if you watched it, you could see a lot of that going on.
Also, worth noting that for Luis right now, it's pretty wise for him to be using the dash mechanic on his Kolaghan as opposed to just casting it, where a lot of the time you'd want to be casting it. And the reason he's doing that is because he wants to get Alex to continue committing more creatures to the board to increase the power level of his board sweeper. And sure, the Kolaghan would live through that anyway, but just in doing so, it encourages Alex to play a certain way, and it encourages him to turtle up and to play defensively with his creatures. And I mean, if he goes into a racing mode, he's probably going to lose here. Even Skirmisher. See, yeah. I don't mind that card.
Which
talked
one?
About that earlier. Even Skirmisher. Right? That's the top card is there?
Can't quite see.
1/1 flyer for 1?
Yeah, 1/1 flyer for 1. Yeah, I don't like that card either.
I mean, I don't love it, but in some decks, I think it's actually pretty good.
Disagree to disagree, my friend.
All right. Disagree to disagree means you agree.
Oh. I didn't run the numbers on that one. Is Alex really at 15 here, speaking of running the numbers?
Yeah. I believe so.
He didn't take 8 last turn? He must have gained life at some point here. Because like he took 3 from the Bathe and Dragonfire hitting the region.
You're right.
And then he got dashed in for 5 plus 3 in the air. Maybe we can just get a quick life total check.
Crux of Fate cleaning up the board here.
So this is a huge play for Luis Scott Vargas, as he's safely got that Kolagon in his hand, ready to do damage, and could not have come any earlier here. Berserker's Onslaught not doing much here, and the life totals were reversed.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense.
Kolagon the Storm Fury attacks for 5 to kill Alexander Hayne. So that's going to do it for game 1. Luis Scott Vargas up a game. And he is one of the good. We've got Brian David Marshall. He's out on the floor, keeping an eye on our other matches, so he's going to be bringing us updates for those of you who are following the progress of our other top 8 players. So once we have him, we'll come on. I already answered that question.
What, he drew the good half of his deck?
No, he drew his only 3 good cards.
That's fair.
I mean, come on. He drew Stormbreak. He drew, like, that's not an average draw. Let's just put it that way. Whoa, speaking of not an average draw, here is Dragon Lord Silumgar, which looks like it stole the Orc Sure Shot there of Jacob Wilson. He's going to have to find a way to get rid of that thing. We know that Jacob has Reach of Shadows in his deck, so he does have an out, but how much longer can he survive here is the question.
Reduce in stature. There's a card that kind of went down in value from where people initially had...
Yeah, it went down for me. I had it a little too high early as well. It looked like it was close enough to removal, and it is close enough to play, but it's not great. Jacob Wilson in the tank here. He's got a Vial of Dragonfire in his hand. He's also got a Lotus Path Djinn. I believe he's got a Contradict as well. He's in big trouble here, though.
Oh, absolutely. Dragonlord Silumgar is such a bomb.
It just dominates the board.
I mean,
You can take out the Orc Sure Shot, his own Orc Sure Shot with the Vial if he wants. He can also just kill the Manifest and hope that at some point he finds an answer for Dragonlord, in which case he'd get his Sure Shot back. But that window's going to close very quickly for him here. Negate your Vial of Dragonfire, says Stefan Neal.
Is Stefan a Madisonian?
He's from Madison?
Yeah, he likes cards like Negate in this limited format, which I've noticed a lot of players who are having quite a bit of success this weekend are playing Negate's main deck. Christian Calcano played 2 Negates main in his sealed pool.
Oh, interesting.
And he's in this top 8 also.
Yeah, absolutely. He was the number 1 seed coming in fact.
This is you know, an interesting little fact where that's a card that normally good players would avoid having in their main deck in limited. We're seeing more of that this weekend.
It looks like Jacob's going to pivot here as his Vial gets countered, and he's going to play the Lotus Path Djinn. Maybe. He has the option of leaving out Contradict here. The problem is he's already behind. Stefan Neal just doesn't have to actually do anything to win this game as it sits.
That's the thing about a card like Contradict. You know, if you're at parity or if you're ahead, it's really nice to pass the turn with that. You're going to get a nice piece of card advantage. You might even get your opponent's best card. But if you're behind, it's just pretty terrible draw step. All
right, looks like Jacob's decided that he has to turn this thing into a race. He's going to attack with the Ruthless Deathfang and then play the 5/5 Gurmag Angler post-combat. The Gurmag Angler is going to hold back the Orc Sure Shot or the Manifest. Will provide a nice block on the ground. He's okay with taking 3 in the air from Dragonlord Silumgar. It doesn't take much to break this up, and Aven Surveyor is exactly that. Stefan Neal just points at it flippantly, like, get that thing out of here, and he crunches in there for 9 damage, dropping Jacob Wilson down to 2. and making this just about a done deal.
Jacob did draw Sidisi's Faithful, which is quite a bit of value here when you have Ruthless Deathfang in play.
Huh, that's interesting.
So depending
Ultimately,
on what else he can
that
do.
pesky Manifest, though, is going to eat something up. Why don't we jump back over to our main match and get caught back up again on Luis Scott Vargas versus Alexander Hayne. Okay, so we are underway, and there's a Dragon Lord servant. Another one of the cards you don't normally see played. And speaking of that, here's Alexander Hayne just moving in with Abzan Runemark on his Dromica Warrior and hitting for 5. The Runemark is just +2/+2. Yeah, you know, I think this table.
Got some
and here's the 3-mana Thunderbreak Regent thanks to the Dragon Lord servant.
It's actually just the most insane.
That is insane. Alex is going to offer up a 2-for-1 here. It'd be interesting to see if Luis actually takes him up on it.
I imagine you do, right? Oh well, if he's
interesting.
The dragon, he's Kolagon in hand also, and then triggers twice.
So he
right,
can curve into it. Yeah, it does. He did block, but Teamer Battle Rage is going to rumble over.
Ooh.
Alex Hayne is putting together kind of a scrappy junker of a deck here, and he's taking it to Luis, who looks like he's had another good draw. He's drawn both of his rare dragons here. And Kolagon's just going to get cast here. I wonder if he's going to have to block again. Luis has already found himself down to 9 life.
I imagine you do have to block. I mean, it's a 2-for-1. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd much rather use some sort of cheap removal spell rather than blocking with your rare dragon, but do what you got to do.
Yeah, and taking the damage here just feels horrible. Alex is missing land drops. All right, he hit his land drop here, but Luis Scott Vargas is on 5 cards in hand here and should be able to start kind of taking over. But, you know, he did use up his 2 big potent threats to trade for a combat trick and then 2-for-1 with the aura and the creature, which leaves him a little bit less here. He's got, you know, a card like, this is a nice card to play on this turn. It's still, you know, it's not a big house here. Fierce Invocation.
Dragon Lord Servant putting in overtime today.
It did. Now, unfortunately, it looks like it's going to not be as great, but it was pretty good. There's Kolagon Stormsinger giving territorial rock haste. I mean, this is just lovely.
Yeah.
So Rock gets in there for 1. Luis is going to attack with his Manifest. That's 4 damage, dropping Alexander Hayne down to 15. What's the follow-up play? It's Dirger Nemesis.
It's just a Grey Ogre.
You're loving it. You're
fine
loving everything.
man.
The turn 6 Grey Ogre. Can't ever flip it up. Why would you want to? Luis Scott Vargas falls down to 7, and what's the play for Alex? He needs something big, and he has something big.
It's a Descent of Dragons.
Descent of the Dragons is going to leave him upgrading his 2 junkers into 2 4/4 dragons, and you do what you got to do, Alexander Hayne. And Luis is going to have to see that 3rd rare again this game if he's going to get out of this. Alex is at 15. He's threatening to attack for lethal next turn. That's 6 damage. And he passes the turn back.
I think he's just dead.
I think he's just dead. That's it. And Luis has to flip up Dirger Nemesis and show Alex. So a smile from Alexander Hayne, who had some junkers himself, but he was able to beat Luis's 2 rares that game. He couldn't beat 3 rares in the first game, but he could beat 2 that game.
Crux would have been kind of insane there. It would have been a one-sided wrath.
Yeah.
So unlucky that he didn't draw
I didn't draw it. Yeah, I don't know what happened.
You just got a 3-mana
Don't
Thunderbreak Regent
don't
and a
understand.
5-mana and a 4-mana Kolagon.
Yeah.
And lost to a Marty Runemark.
All right, so back to business here on the other side, and it looks like these guys are still in the throes of battle. Wow, so Jacob must have taken care of Dragon Lord Silumgar. Oh, he bounced it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Sidisi's Faithful with Ruthless Deathfang. It's a powerful play.
It was, but it looks like it's probably not powerful enough here, as that's a lethal attack, and Stefan Neal is going to take game 1 of that match. Will of the Naga was the Manifest. That's an important card to reveal. Jacob's going to be aware of that.
It's an interesting one. Will of Naga is a card that's power level varies wildly in this format. I think, you know, baseline you want at least like 15, 16 guys who want a reasonably aggressive deck to be playing it at all. And, you know, when you have an 18 or 19 creature deck, the card's absurd. Super powerful. But when you're working with, you know... Oh, BDM has an update for us.
Yeah, BDM, what do you got from the floor? It's on BDM.
Okay, it's working. I was trying to find it. What I do have is a result. Christian Calcano.
Match result?
2 quick games over Zach Jesse. Game 1, he put a Mastery of the Unseen down on turn 2 and just worked that card for the rest of the game. Game 2, he just had removal. He had creatures. It was kind of gross. He didn't even need to use the Grave Purge in his hand.
Oh, geez. Still had all these Grave Purges?
Still had all these Grave Purges.
All right, so
also four red players in the feature match area. So, Marshall, when we were watching the draft, we saw a lot of red going around. There's half the field is playing red pretty seriously.
All right, so Christian Calcano, congratulations. He is our first semifinalist.
Working to try to defend relative home turf.
It's close enough, right?
Close enough, right? I'll call it close enough.
Okay. I mean, I think you're qualified. You're from here, too. All right, so we're going to get an exciting Game 3 finale, Luis Scott Vargas versus Alexander Hayne, and it's been kind of an old-fashioned limited fight here where they're just cobbled together some decks with some really undesirable cards, and they're trying to make wins work.
Insanely powerful rares.
And some absurd rares, too. Totally. And they're just, you know, both of them, especially Alex, I mean, he had to just sort of scrap that one out. He beat 2 dragons that game with not quite dragon level cards. So let's see if he can do it again, or if Luis can put together a curve, or maybe find some of his really good top end cards and finish off Alex here. There's Territorial Rock for Alexander Hayne. Yeah, at least it's a 2-drop. And a Morph for Luis Scott Vargas is his first play of the game.
I believe that's Irish Shaman.
Okay.
A very good one.
Yeah, super solid Morph. It can help you find extra lands. It's a nice little attacker.
Yeah, I had that card in my pre-release deck, and it overperformed, so it was easily the best card in my pre-release deck.
Must be double blocked?
Must be double blocked. And a 3/2 that has to be double blocked is a pretty impressive body.
It is. The Megamorph cost being just red is really important as well. Look, I think he's trying to decide, yeah, he gave a brief pause whether he wanted to actually flip that up now, but he's decided that he can wait a little bit. You want to wait if you can, because then you have extra mana to use the card. You only get that one turn to do it. So Abzan Runemark doing work on Territorial Rock with the Territorial Rock, and here is a Summit Prowler, and this is a fast fight here. Alexander Hayne has certainly put it to Luis Scott Vargas. He's playing with no fear whatsoever. He knows about Crux of Fate, but he's just like, I'm running it. And here's Irish Shaman getting flipped up. Let's see what he reveals. It's a swamp. He can play that. And he's got a ton of lands in hand as Luis Scott Vargas as well. So he's going to attack with both.
Is his hand all swamps and a Hooded Assassin?
I think it's 4 swamps and a not swamp. Yeah.
Not too exciting.
No. Now he did draw his Irish Shaman, which can help him get out of this a little bit. It cleared away a swamp basically, and now the Hooded Assassin is going to do work on the Summit Prowler. The problem here, of course, is that Alex still has that threat just ticking away in the air. 3 damage, 3 damage, 3 damage, and Luis doesn't currently have an answer for that at all. Now, he does have answers in his deck, and he's got quite a few of them. He needs to find one, and he's going to need to find it fairly quickly, as Alex is going to close out this game if he doesn't. He finds another land, so Luis Scott Vargas is flooding hard here. And the time is going to be, he's going to have a couple of more turns to get this thing done. I don't see a way for Luis to try to race at this point either. Oh no, that's really bad for Luis Scott Vargas. Alexander Hayne.
A playable card?
Yeah. Well, Alex has actually played 2 in a row, Summit Prowler also.
The Summit Prowler is pretty nice in these days.
Yeah, it is, especially given the landscape we have here. So that's 6 damage, and that means that Luis is dead in 1 turn, and in fact dead right now. Sarkhan's Rage finishes him off, and Luis just shows the camera how many lands he drew. He just didn't have anything going that turn. Alexander Hayne drew spells. They were spells, and they got the job done. You know, I think that Alex knows that since he's cobbled together a bit of a, you know, a rough deck here, that the best thing for him is to just try to get the game done as quickly as possible for when his opponents stumble or if they flood out a little bit, and it worked for him. So Alexander Hayne, congratulations to you. You are our second semifinalist here in Atlantic City.
Rumark actually looks kind of, it was pretty important in both the games he won.
Well, I mean, look, when they stick, they're good. So
there's a lot of removal. Those cards are not good.
Right. I mean, they look good when they stay on the creature for the whole duration of the game. Meanwhile, renowned weaponsmith is getting into the red zone as we join Jacob Wilson versus Stephen Neal. That's one of our quarterfinal matches still outstanding. The other is Godenis Vidigiris versus Brian Gottlieb. That one's still underway as well. BDM will bring us updates on that as they come in. So here's a Soul Flare for Stephen Neal.
Weaponsmith may have gotten a little bit of value. Look at that Vial of Dragonfire in the graveyard.
You're right. Very nice. So Soul Flare comes down a turn early for Stephen Neal, and it's got flying.
Yeah, an Air Elemental. I mean, it's just a 4/4, right? Or no,
so it's Air Elemental.
Air Elemental. You have the Ojutai Interceptor.
Yep.
That's a nice card.
Yeah, it was a nice card. Instead, it's going to get poked out of the way there with Sidisi's Faithful to clear the way for the beatdown of 3 damage here from Jacob Wilson. Stephen Neal draws his card for the turn. He's got enough mana to just recast. Unfortunately, won't have flying this time, but a 4/4 on this board looks pretty good anyway. Okay, yep, just a straight up 4/4 Soul Flare, full price. And he's going to pass the turn back to Jacob, who looks to be in the tank here. Oh, he's going to Rakshas's Disdain.
Yeah, this is a scrappy draft. I love this stuff.
This, I think the pool of cards that we had wasn't that great. Now, there could be a great deck out there. Hopefully we'll see one on camera, because what we've seen so far has not been great decks.
I see, but watching the not great decks
I'm not saying I don't like watching them. I'm saying they're not great decks.
I'll agree with you there.
So here's Ojutai Summons, which is going to make a Jin Monk. And it's going to go into exile for a rebound, probably. And there's Orc Sure Shot now for Stephen Neal. Stefan has fallen behind quickly. It's up to Jacob Wilson, though, to equalize this thing, as Stefan took the first game from him. So Jacob's got to win 2 in a row here. Take a look at Stefan. Now, you said Stefan's from the Madison area.
Yeah, I think
a hotbed of Magic talent, limited players all over the place.
I mean, they play a lot of games out there.
Mm-hmm. Here's Ojutai's Breath to lock down the Morph, which is going to let the Jin Monk still attack for 2 and drop Stephen Neal to half of his starting life total. So, looks good for Jacob Wilson as the board sits. Playing 2 creatures in 1 turn for Stefan is going to be pretty difficult, I think. And there's a Ruthless Death Fang. Jacob Wilson says, look, if my dragon's going to be immune anyway, so I might as well run it out there.
Stefan does have reducing stature.
Okay. He also rebounded his Ojutai's Breath targeting the Ruthless Death Fang, so that's why you see it tapped already. So both of those will not be untapping on Jacob's untapped step.
Yeah, so, I mean, Ojutai's Breath, similar to Will of the Nagun, in the way that the more creatures you have, the more aggressive your deck is, the better those cards become. You play them as the last card in your hand, really strong.
Sure. All right, so Stephen Neal doing what he has to do to get in for some damage. He shrunk down the Jin Monk and attacked with his Orc Sure Shot. He knows that this isn't plan A for him, as Jacob was at 20 and is now at 16. But it wasn't going to block anyway, so he might as well do it. This is going to be an Ojutai Interceptor that's going to get turned face up and trade for a Jin Monk, which is going to make Stephen Neal only drop to 8. Still big threats on Jacob Wilson's side of the board. And this also means that Neal doesn't get to play reduced in stature. All right, so Jacob Wilson deciding what he wants to do for the rest of this turn. He's got his own copy of Orc Sure Shot, and he's just adding more threats to the battlefield, trying to overwhelm Stephen Neal's board position here. So the reducing
for a minute there, because wondering whether or not he should be playing around some type of board sweeping effect, Crux of Fate, something like that.
Yeah. Decided not. So now Neal can play out the reducing stature, maybe on the Death Fang or whatever, to prevent some of the damage here, but he's still facing a ton of damage here. And I think going to go for reduce. That does not trigger the Sure Shot. He's just going to pass the turn back here. So block, take 2, 4, 5. in his best case scenario. So what Steven's going to try to do here is block the morph, or maybe even the sure shot, if he doesn't think the morph is very big. And he's also got card draw spell that he can play on his end step with enhanced awareness. He's going to need to find something pretty special with that enhanced awareness, though, to get out of this mess, as he falls down to 3 life and is now facing yet another creature, Ukud Cobra. And here it is, enhanced awareness, draw 3, discard 1. And these just aren't the type of cards that he needs to find. You know, he found a Will of the Naga, but as you can see, Jacob has overwhelmed the board here.
Yeah, you want creatures on the board when you're casting a card like Will of the Naga. Otherwise, it's a life gain spell.
Right, and it's not going to gain him enough life here. So he discards his Jeskai Sage, draws an island. He's got Will of the Naga and one other card that I haven't seen yet. But it looks like dire straits here for Steph and Neil, and we may be headed to a game 3 here pretty soon. Oh, it was Dragonlord Silumgar is what he drew. Is that enough here? He can steal the Ukud Cobra, have 2 blockers, and actually...
oh, it's Silumgar's command.
It's Silumgar's command.
Oh, he has that and Dragonlord
Yeah,
Silumgar?
he has both.
Ooh.
Now, that isn't
He
enough
is
on its
faithful.
own, so he is going to have to
Blue-black
use his
Dragonlord.
Will of the Naga to stay alive here. This is getting interesting because now a top deck of Dragonlord Silumgar could actually get him right back in this game. All the pressure that Jacob's been able to throw at him just hasn't been enough. Monastery Siege, a little late to the party here, but he'll take it. And before attacks, he must have not had enough to cast the Will of the Naga in his graveyard. Okay, so we're going to go to game 3 here. Jacob Wilson evens things up with Stephen Neal.
It's exciting.
Yeah, this has been a good top 8.
Scrappy decks are the best. It's always the most fun when
I like watching scrappy decks too.
you're worried about, like, oh no, my deck's so bad, and then you play against your first opponent, you're like, oh. You play against your next opponent, and sometimes the whole table, everybody's just fighting, everybody's switching to get out of each other's way, and as a result, they keep bumping into each other. You're trying to shift lanes and constantly just playing bumper cars. In those situations, I mean, it's about just putting together what you can, having the most consistent deck possible.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a stark contrast to what we saw in the last round of Swiss, or the last draft from Swiss, where we saw some really powerful decks in the hands of our players here. Luis Scott Vargas had a blue-black deck that looked fantastic. We saw him draft that. Jacob has a pretty decent deck too, a couple of low-end cards, but this has been a whole nother level. BDM, what do you got for updates?
So I was watching Gudenis Vidagiris versus Brian Gottlieb. Brian Gottlieb took game 1. In game 2, both players were a little tight. It looked like Gudenis Vidagiris had taken over the game. He had just enough damage to win it on the next turn, but an Alpha Strike from Brian Gottlieb, a Sarkhan's Rage from Brian Gottlieb, and he took it in 2 quick games. Gudenis Vidagiris is eliminated. Brian Gottlieb advances to the semifinals. I think he'll face Christian Calcano there.
You're correct. Thanks, BDM. So we've now got 3 of our 4 semifinalists. We've got Alexander Hayne, who is awaiting the victor of this game 3 that we're about to watch here. We've got Christian Calcano versus Brian Gottlieb in our other half of our bracket. Calcano just running it.
Your heart still in this?
Oh yeah. It's been a scrappy draft. We've been watching these kind of junky cards go at each other.
Junky cards are the best. I'm so happy right now.
Calcano's deck is really sweet.
Oh no,
So,
Calcano has an actual good deck?
Calcano has an actual good deck. Remember, he got past the Mastery of the Unseen. He got past that Merciless
He's
Executioner.
black-white.
He's black-white.
And that's what he loves.
His deck has got cheap creatures to flip up on the Mastery. He's got as many soul summons as he wants. He's got harsh sustenance. He's got good removal spells, typhoid rats to lock the board up early. His deck looks sweet. I would not. He's already called his shot that he's going to win this tournament, but he does that every week. So, you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Hey, he's got to go to work. I wouldn't put it. If he's got a legitimately good deck, I wouldn't put it beyond him in any way. I mean, he's going to be playing against the winner of this. These decks look okay though, right?
These decks look much better than the decks from the other side.
Yeah,
of the
these look
bracket.
like what I'd call like your normal decks. They got some nice big top cards, but the bottom cards aren't, off-color morphs or whatever. They're playing like real cards at each slot.
Yeah, we saw like Cobras, some powerful uncommons, some powerful commons.
And that's Silumgar's Command and Dragonlord Silumgar?
Yeah, as I was saying, he's very faithful to that Dragonlord.
I like that.
That's my
Blue-Black's been doing
favorite
well.
Dragonlord.
Yeah.
Dragonlord
It's
Silumgar?
the sweetest.
Yeah. He's kind of pug-like. You know,
I think the
he has
best
that
one's
mushy
Ojitai.
face.
You could make an argument for Dragonlord Atarka because of the way that it can get you back from being behind, but I just like Ojitai. Just put Ojitai down on turn 5 and just wreck them.
Ojitai's the coolest.
Yeah.
It's definitely the best
Silumgar's
one
sweet
constructed.
For sure. And I think it
In-
might be the best in Limited, too.
In Limited, I think Silumgar's the best.
Do you?
I really do.
Okay, that's fair. I think it's close. Difference between 5 and 6 mana comes into play there, but
That's true.
2 for 1 automatic no matter what, and it's in a tempo oriented. You know, like it's such a huge swing.
It takes like 6 drops sometimes.
That's right. It's also difficult to kill. Like 5 toughness is a lot.
Yeah, a 3/5 Death Touch with flying is pretty impressive in this format.
It's a big deal.
By itself.
No, I agree.
And you think about Uku Cobra being like a super high quality uncommon, like probably top 5 uncommons in the set. And that's just a 2/5 Death Touch for 4.
On the ground.
On the ground, you know? And then this card, like, control magics anything. In addition to being a 3/5 flyer with Death Touch. Yeah, it costs 2 more, but control magics are generally worth that much mana.
That's right, Arlick. So Stephaniel is mulliganing, as you can see here. There's a look of our feature match areas. We get Stefan on the right, and there's Jacob Wilson. Okay, he's kept. So we are underway here. Stefan's on the play for this critical game 3, and it's a duress to kick things off. So the options for Stefan are actually quite plentiful here. He can even take an Ojitai summons, effectively taking a creature with duress, or a contradict, or a monastery siege. So it's going to depend on how Stephaniel feels that this game is going to go. You know, a card like monastery siege is good if the game's going to go for a really long time.
I feel like he pretty much has to take the siege. It combos with the angler. It's going to smooth out Wilson's draw. It's pretty unlikely that Stefan's expecting this game to end in the first 5-6 turns.
Correct.
And if it goes longer than that, the Monastery Siege is clearly the most powerful card that he could take with the rest.
Jacob Wilson also is stuck on 2 lands. Well, not stuck, but he only has 2 lands. So, this could keep him off of that for a while longer. He has found a land off the top of his library here. In fact, he's found 2, so that won't be an issue. And there's Updraft Elemental. First play of the game for Jacob. And a Riding a Bean for Stephaniel. That's pretty nice, especially when you've got the big bombs going in your deck. He's going to manifest that, and he pretty quickly put the other one on top of his library too. So things kind of moving forward here for Stephaniel. Not facing much pressure, just the Updraft Elemental, so he's got a little time to kind of let things breathe here.
Wilson has an interesting decision here. See, he has he has 2 options in terms of which land he can play here. He can either comes in and play tap land, or as he did, he plays an untapped land and then casts Lotus Pathogen. By playing Dismal Blackwater, that would allow him to play Ojitai Summons and or Contradict on the following turn. Ojitai Summons on turn 5 is obviously a very powerful play, especially against the blue-black deck. But just the chance that he could have drawn an untapped land means that it's probably better to do it the way he did.
Would it have been an island?
You're right, it does have to be an island. Mm-hmm. So the Blackwater, I don't know.
It's interesting. That is an interesting
that was
point,
an interesting,
Jacob. Yeah, for sure. It's looks like he does have another play he can make here, though, with this Sibsig Icebreakers. And this is going to punish Stephaniel a little bit more than it punishes Jacob, as Stefan is low on cards and after a mulligan and being on the play as well. He discards Ojitai's Breath this time, leaving himself with 2 cards left, 4 mana on the battlefield, and the Soul Flare with the Manifest there, Manifest creature as well. Meanwhile, Jacob Wilson's going to rumble, get in for 3 damage in the air here, dropping Stefan down to 16. Dismal Backwater is going to bump Jacob up to 21, and he's going to pass a turn back.
I believe Jacob's splashing green for a Den Protector.
That's correct. Island off the top here for Stefan. And the hands go into the hair. And he's got to start making decisions here. This is a critical game 3. The winner will advance to the semifinals, still have a shot to be our GP champion here. The loser of this match is going to have to go home. with a solid top 8 finish and not much else.
Jacob Wilson, already a Grand Prix champion, finalist at the Pro Tour, top 8 at another Pro Tour, younger than the game of Magic itself, recently featured in a Vice documentary about Magic. Stefan Neal, Madisonian, plays with the likes of Brian Cole, Sam Black, Adrian Sullivan regularly. They've been waiting for him to have his due for a while. Really well-respected player. Yeah, now he gets to go to the Pro Tour.
You know, that's a big barrier for a lot of people is getting that qualification feels like that's the battle. Wow, this is a tough play here for Stefan Neal. He is deep in the tank. And he is going to ultimately Ojitize Breath, the Sib-Sig Icebreakers, which is going to open the door for an attack, and drop Jacob Wilson down to 16.
See, and now this is interesting because he knows about the Ojitize Summons and the Gurmag Angler. This kind of cuts off Gurmag Angler as an option because you don't want to cast the Gurmag Angler into the Ojitize Breath.
Right. Yeah, good point. And so instead he's going to go with the Ojitize Summons, which is going to get him a 2/2 flying Jin Monk. It's also going to trigger the Lotus Path Jin to get in for a little bit of extra damage here. Though Jacob looks like he's considering keeping back his Updraft Elemental to keep the Manifest at bay. Running some numbers, take another look at his hand real quick. This is the last match going in the feature match area for the quarterfinals here in Atlantic City. He's getting in with both. 4 damage is going to drop Stefan Neal down to 12. And that means that Jacob is going to take another hit here. He gets to rebound his Ojitize Breath now, does Neal. Going to lock down the Jin Monk, which is going to clear the way for 6 more damage to drop Jacob down to 10, assuming that the Manifest doesn't become anything, which is kind of what I'm assuming at this point, and it doesn't. So what does he have for this play? This could be a big turn for Neal. If he can have a big board-affecting play this turn, he could actually try to squeak this game out. If he doesn't, it feels like Jacob is going to be able to take over with just more stuff, right? I mean, he's going to have another Jin Monk on his upkeep. He's going to have a couple of tap creatures, but eventually they'll all untap.
He gets a Gurmag Angler probably this turn. Yeah, Jacob looks to be in fine shape. But Stefan has turned this into a race quite intentionally. So he clearly has a plan set up.
I think Wilson's going to be thinking about Silumgar's command here. And he is going to attack just with his flyers. And he's just going to pass the turn back too. He doesn't want to let Stefan Neal have any value off a card like Contradict or something like that. In fact, I believe that Neal's hand is just land reduce in stature, and I didn't quite see what he drew there.
I think it's Stone Hued Retainers?
Hued Stone Retainers?
Yes.
This is what it looked like to me too. Now, I think he's got enough mana. I think he has a land in his hand that he can go land reduce in stature Hued Stone Retainers, right? Yeah, he does. Okay. He's putting up a fight here, no doubt about it. Remember, he's on a mulligan while on the play.
Yeah, if they both had to discard a card. It's not a good way to end your tournament, but he made top 8, GP, he qualified for the Pro Tour. This is a guy who's got a lot of good people around him to test. He can be dangerous once he gets to play on the big stage.
He could also win this GP.
It's not completely out of the realm of possibility right now.
He's going to reduce in stature the Sib-Sig Icebreakers to make an attack. He's willing to trade the Manifest off for the Jin here. And so far it looks like Jacob is going to oblige him, though. I can see in Jacob's hand he's got that Rakshasa's Disdain again. And that's going to nab the Hued Stone Retainers when Stefan goes for it. And it was the Kolagon's command that was the Manifest. It's always annoying. And here he goes, Hued Stone Retainers, and that's going to get disdained. And you can see Jacob's holding on a second. Even though Stefan has passed the turn back, I think that Jacob still views that as on the stack. Yeah, he's going to let it resolve, though.
Yeah, I mean, all of his guys fly. He's not facing lethal damage. He has essentially a hard counter spell in his hand.
He would let Stefan have 8 power here, though. And, you know, if Stefan ripped a card like Will of the Naga or something, he's got to be a little worried about letting his opponent just...
Oh, no, he has the counter spell. He's just safe.
Can he play around it?
Can Neil play around it?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, he's got 4 cards in his yard, so he can leave up 4 mana, and right now it's for 4.
Well, I guess you're right.
So, you know,
So
it's
he
a
can.
consideration.
Yeah. That's a good draw step, though.
What did he find? Oh, Sidisi is faithful to get rid of the huge stone retainers. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the huge stone retainers now is stuck in Neil's hand unless Neil can find something else.
That's right, and also it's another card in the yard here for Jacob Wilson, and that's going to do it. Jacob Wilson is going to advance. A tough one for Stefan Neil. You can see he's kind of shaking his head and looks a little dejected, but I guarantee you, after the dust settles on this loss, he's going to be quite happy to be qualified for the Pro Tour, especially given the area that he lives in. So he